This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
School fire in Liberia kills 26 students and 2 teachers. Burkina Faso scientists unleash sterilized mosquitoes in an innovative strategy to fight malaria. And a second batch of Nigerians leave South Africa in repatriation after xenophobic violence. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Ramah Nyang is here first with the day's business headlines. Ramah.
That's right, Beatrice. This is what's coming up in the course of the hour. UN rules on fuel shipping quality will hit Nigeria due to its reliance on generators for electricity. And the second All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition opens up at the AA headquarters in Addis Ababa. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Ramah, thank you. And let's begin with some distressing news coming out of Liberia. At least 26 students and 2 teachers have been killed in a fire which broke out in a Muslim school in the outskirts of Monrovia. The incident happened on Wednesday morning when the children were still asleep. Scores of others suffered various degrees of burns. Most of the victims were aged between 10 and 20 years. President George Weah confirmed the incident and sent his condolences to the affected families. The school is situated in Paynesville City in the outskirts of the capital. It is not known what caused the blaze. Well, CGTN's Deji Badmus is following this distressing story and he joins me now from neighboring Nigeria in Lagos. Deji, what is the status now after this fire accident in Liberia?
Well, Beatrice, you're quite right. It's quite a distressing story. Very sad day for the people of Liberia. The latest is that those who died in that fire have actually been buried. As a matter of fact, the burial took place just some minutes ago. And President George Weah, of course, has pledged to rebuild the mosque and the school. But it's a very sad one now for the people of Liberia. And more facts now are beginning to emerge after that incident. What we're gathering now is that the fire started at about 1 a.m. and some of these people, maybe more of the students, some of the students would have been saved. The problem was that, look, this building had just one entrance, and then there was no quick response. You don't have fire service was not available, so there was no response from the fire service agencies now to actually help put out the fire. So the people around, the first responders basically rushed there, and they were able to get the imam and his wife and 2 other people out of the building. But unfortunately, by that time, the smoke had already engulfed the entire area, so people could actually not go in. Of course, the police has said it is still investigating the cause, but the general what is emerging from that community, I'm talking Bassa community now in Paynesville where it actually happened, is that most of the people around that area say the problem was actually electrical fault, that is exactly what caused the fire. The police has also said that, but it says it cannot confirm at this time that the fire was as a result of electrical fault, that it will still have to investigate it. But no doubt a very sad one for the people of Liberia, especially for the people of Paynesville where this incident has happened. And as I said earlier, President George Weah, of course, has pledged to rebuild the mosque and the school where the incident happened. Beatrice?
Deji Badmus for us there in Lagos on that story coming out of Liberia. The Egyptian police have killed 9 militants in a security operation in the eastern outskirts of the capital, Cairo. The militants are said to be part of 2 terrorist cells that have been operating in the city. Here's CGTN's Adil Mahroui with more.
The Egyptian police forces say they have found and killed a leader in a terrorist group called Liwa al-Sawra. He has been accused of assassinating a military officer on the outskirts of Cairo and planning and executing several attacks against police checkpoints. According to a statement from the Interior Ministry, police forces have identified the location of 2 terrorist cells on the eastern outskirts of the Egyptian capital. where he was hiding. As they approached the sites, militants opened fire. It's a common scenario in recent police raids against terrorist groups. According to the police, 9 militants have been killed. No casualties have been reported from the police side. After searching the hideout, security officials say 6 machine guns, 2 shotguns were found, as well as explosive material and electric circuits used to make improvised explosive devices. It's the 3rd crossfire with militant groups reported by the police this week. The Interior Ministry said that on Sunday, it has successfully managed to prevent an attack on one of the security checkpoints in North Sinai. As they approached to make an arrest, militants opened fire from their vehicles. The police responded to defend, killing all of the perpetrators. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In Burkina Faso, scientists have reached a milestone in the fight against malaria. They have released 5,000 genetically sterilized mosquitoes, but have also reignited a debate on bioethics. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
The technique is called gene drive. Scientists in Burkina Faso have genetically engineered mosquitoes to spread infertility throughout the population in the wild. It's part of a project to wipe out a single species of the malaria-carrying insect.
In the village, we are grateful for Target Malaria because we think this project will reduce malaria, which is killing our sons and daughters. This project is not just for us, it is for the whole world.
Malaria still kills hundreds of thousands across the continent every single year. But investment in anti-malarial drugs, mosquito nets and insecticides is slowing. Researchers are looking at new approaches.
The ultimate goal for Target Malaria is to develop a genetic fighting tool which is durable in the long term, affordable, and that is cost efficient.
National regulatory authorities and an independent ethics committee oversee the research. But not everyone is so convinced. Activists are worried about the unintended environmental consequences.
Imagine these modified mosquitoes that are going to be unleashed on nature. They may be able to release pathogens, to release viruses, which under normal circumstances they will not be able to harbor. It's an entire population that will be decimated, a whole ecosystem.
Some people say there are risks with gene drive, but we are convinced that is not true. We have no doubts because Target Malaria has reassured us that these mosquitoes are not going to bring new diseases.
The researchers in Burkina Faso are also developing another solution that results in only male offspring. This would help to reduce malaria transmission since it's only the female that bites. The team is hoping to get approval for widespread use in the next few years. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Well, let's get perspectives on this now from Dr. Willis Akwale in Kenya. He's the Chief of Party at the Impact Malaria Project, joining me here in studio. Dr. Akwale, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. First, malaria has been quite a challenge for African countries to eradicate. Give us your comment on the efforts by Burkina Faso scientists to fight malaria spread through sterilized mosquitoes. Does this provide a viable option in the fight against malaria?
I am not optimistic about the use of sterile mosquitoes for 2 main reasons. First, this is not the first time sterile mosquitoes have been tried to control a disease. We know scientists in South America, particularly Brazil, have tried to use sterile mosquitoes to control Zika virus. They have also tried to use sterile mosquitoes to control yellow fever, but there's been no real great success. The other reason is the issue to do with the bioethics. I think the strategy is to sterilize the male mosquitoes. They have been doing this in the laboratory, and I know in Burkina Faso now they have released that to the population in a controlled kind of environment. And as you know, mosquitoes, first the male type mainly feed on plants. And you see you are modifying a species, and you don't know when it goes to the natural habitat what it can cause. It could have an impact on some of the plants that they feed on. And also just on the other populations of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are also different, and there's interaction among this mosquito population.
So I just do want to take a step back and come back to you, because you've said that the sterilized mosquitoes or the sterilized fashion in Brazil, for instance, has not had much success. Do we know why there is such a great failure?
One of the things is just what you call the transmission dynamics of diseases. In fact, specifically for malaria, what the Burkina Faso experiment is trying to do is to reduce the number of mosquitoes, what we call now mosquito population density. But there are types of mosquito that cause malaria, particularly what we call Anopheles gambian funestas. These are species like here in Kenya and most of the sub-Saharan Africa. They are very efficient. Even a small amount of these mosquitoes are lethal. You just need one and it can inoculate you with the parasite that causes malaria. So I think the overall goal of just reducing the population density without looking at other parameters like the efficiency of those mosquitoes, how quiet, how they have adapted, how they are able to almost put an anesthesia before they inject you. There are so many issues to look at other than just reducing the mosquito density.
Let's look at the Kenyan example, because Kenya has become the third African country, though, to begin anti-malarial vaccinations. What's the progress there?
I think a vaccine is a very promising tool. It stands some potential. We are at very early stages. In experimental stage, what we call clinical trial phase 3, it had about 39% efficacy. One thing we need to be very clear, there will be no single bullet. There'll be no silver bullet for malaria. All these interventions have a big role to play. So the vaccine comes at the point where you want to prevent the malaria parasite from going into the liver, because it's in the liver that it really incubates, and when it is now released back into the bloodstream, it causes the febrile illness, and that's when it infects other blood cells, ruptures them, and really causes the malaria disease. So this vaccine is trying to stop that, and it has had some good success in trials that were done here. But the follow-up was for a period of around 4 years. It was administered in children 5 months to 17 months, about 4 doses of that.
Right.
So we want to see in a much bigger population, and that is what the Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi trials are all about. Ghana and Malawi started earlier. Kenya just launched last year. We are looking at about 120,000 children of that age living in the endemic areas, especially around the Lake Victoria endemic, which has the highest burden of malaria.
Right.
I'm hoping that they can be followed for even a much longer period to see whether that immunity will be sustained for a much longer period of time.
So very briefly, though, you said there is no silver bullet in eradicating malaria, but there are some countries that have had successes in eradicating malaria. What are the chances for countries like Kenya and other neighboring countries? And you have also mentioned that Ghana, is also trying the vaccine trial. So what are the chances of these countries?
Yes, so let me first start by talking about eradication and clarify that in Kenya we are still at the control stage. We then go to elimination, and eradication is when the disease will not be completely there. Now, I know the America, parts of Europe like Italy, and then we also have parts of Asia that have eradicated malaria. One thing that especially worked for America is because the drugs that were being used then, chloroquine, did not have any resistance. The insecticides that were being used did not have any resistance. So you took chloroquine or you used quinine, the parasite were killed complete in your blood. You used DDT also, which was very effective. It killed them. And then there is what you call the geography and the climate. So in these regions, once you used those medicines, there's a long period of winter where the mosquitoes cannot breed. So they break down the transmission cycle completely. So there are factors that favor some regions, especially the temperate regions. But when you now come to the tropics, you have the challenges of humidity and rainfall and high temperatures that propagate this. So that is what worked for them. So currently we have resistance to the medicines we are using. We have a lot of resistance to the insecticides that we are using to control the mosquitoes.
All right, Dr. Willis Halwale, thank you very much for your insights on malaria eradication. Let's now go to Zimbabwe, where striking junior doctors have been barred from delivering a petition to Parliament demanding the return of the president of the National Hospital Doctors Association, who was allegedly abducted on Saturday. CGTN's Ramah is following the developments on this story in Harare.
It's been 4 days since Dr. Peter Magombei went missing. His colleagues believe his disappearance is linked to their ongoing strike over pay, which began on the 3rd of September. They held night vigils on Monday and Tuesday, and on Wednesday planned to deliver a petition to Parliament demanding the union leaders' release, but were blocked by police, which says it hadn't cleared the march.
It's quite emotional, and I think it's really unfair on our patients as well as unfair on us who are supposed to be attending to our patients at this particular moment. So we are just trying to make it to address the relevant authorities in this country to just try and make efforts to make sure this situation is addressed, and Dr. Peter Magombei is released in safe health.
Doctors have been joined by nurses and senior consultants in downing their tools until Dr. Magombei is found. Police is treating this as a missing person case and not an abduction. It does say, however, it is urgently investigating the disappearance. But until it gets to the bottom of the matter, those who need medical attention won't be able to get it because the doctors meant to be working in the wards treating them are all out here protesting. They say it's better here than endangering their patients.
You should be properly remunerated such that you attend in a better state, because an unsatisfied doctor is a hazard to the patient. So that's what we are trying to make the authorities to kind of address this matter in a way that it is sustainable.
Junior doctors and government have clashed several times over wages, allowances and unsafe working conditions at under-equipped public hospitals. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
In South Africa, the second plane load of Nigerian nationals has left OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. Last week, 189 people successfully boarded the Mercy flight. And on Wednesday morning, it is understood that over 300 people, including several children, were cleared by immigration officials. Angelo Coppola reports now from the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg.
Second set of passengers has left OR Tambo International Airport, and that's on Wednesday morning. We understand it's a lot fuller flight than it was last week, when a lot of people were turned away because their papers weren't in order, and immigration officials here at OR Tambo said that they couldn't actually board the flight, so they had to go back and get those papers sorted out. We understand that there are some concerns around some of the kids that have been here for over 24 hours waiting for this flight to happen. What we do know, for instance, is that there have been no other reported incidents of xenophobia in the Johannesburg area, so it seems like that's scaled down considerably. That's after the envoys have been doing their round trip around Africa. They're in the second country at the moment, so we don't know for sure whether there's going to be a third flight to accommodate any more of those Nigerian nationals who are hoping to go back to their home country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Egypt expresses frustration over lack of progress in talks over Ethiopia's Great Dam. An experts meet in Tunis to discuss solutions to the crisis of road fatalities in Africa.
In 70 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest, CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and free mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
I've covered the China story for more than 30 years.
I'm amazed by what they have done here.
And over the years, I've witnessed China change. At times, in leaps and bounds, in very dramatic ways. And sometimes, in a more gradual way. Change may be glacial, but here it seems to be constantly happening. I'm Jaime Flor Cruz. Join me as I revisit and rediscover an ever-changing China.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Israel, nearly all the votes from Tuesday's general election have been counted, but there is no clear winner. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Likud has claimed 32 of Parliament's 120 seats. This is the same as the blue and white party of his main challenger, Benny Gantz, with the results giving no obvious path for either to form a coalition of 61 or more seats. The situation raises the possibility of a unity government. Egypt's Foreign Minister Sami Shukri has voiced Cairo's frustration over the lack of progress in talks with Ethiopia. Negotiations held in the Egyptian capital about the technical operation and the filing of the reservoir for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stumbled. Another round of talks will take place in early October in Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Egypt experts in irrigation and water management will also attend the Khartoum talks. Here's CGTN's Adel Mahroui.
What began as warm relations between Egypt and Ethiopia have been gradually fading. Cairo says it's worried that the negotiations about the Grand Dam are taking too much time than they should, and that it won't accept any party to impose its vision over the other. Despite that this month's talks stumbled, Egypt is still hopeful that the next round of talks with Sudan and Ethiopia would yield results.
Since the Ethiopia declaration that it will build the dam, Egypt has engaged in a marathon of endless talks, until the dam has been an unescapable reality. Now partial operation is set for 2020, and by 2022, it will be fully operational. For Egypt, it's a reality that it has to face. Ethiopia has rejected all Egyptian suggestions. All what is left is time to fill out the dam.
In October, experts and scientists will meet in Sudan. A ministerial meeting will follow. The three countries must agree on the technical operation and the filling of the dam's reservoir. Egypt suggests 7 years for the filling so as not to have a major impact on its water share. Ethiopia wants it to be just 3.
Egypt believes cooperation is the best way to manage joint water resources and that the only way out of this crisis is through negotiations. That doesn't, however, mean that Egypt ran out of cards. It can still put international pressure by resorting to international arbitration to manage the dam's operation and the filling of the reservoir.
More than 90% of Egypt's water comes from the Nile. With its 100 million population, Egypt is way below the water security line. UN says its 1,000 cubic meter per capita. Egyptians' share is only 600. The filling of the reservoir could have a great effect on downstream nations. Egypt says that every 1% less in its water share will cause desertification for about 100,000 acres of land. And the country doesn't have the financial resources or the time to recover the water it needs from other resources than the Nile. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, Ethiopia's government says Egypt's proposal of filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in 7 years is unacceptable. Ethiopia's irrigation minister also said Egypt's ideas are inconsiderate of Ethiopia's development plans and the needs of nations along the River Nile, including that of the Sudan. According to the minister, issues relating to the dam and the waters of the Nile are technical and are not and should be solved through professional dialogue.
The main questions and the new proposal Egypt has come up with is in relation with the operation of the dam. For example, one of the demands they are making is that the Grand Renaissance Dam to release 40 billion cubic meters of water every year without decreasing the average waterfall. This is simply unacceptable. You know, they should also consider our development plans and interests. They should also respect the interests of other nations like Sudan. So, these kinds of obligations are issues of operations, and we cannot agree with.
The Independent High Authority for the Elections in Tunisia says 2 independent candidates will be heading to a runoff vote in the country's presidential election. Kais Said and Nabil Karouai have been leading in the polls that took place on Sunday. Said has garnered 18.4% of the vote, while Nabil Karouai has 15.6%. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi is in Tunis and filed this story.
A few weeks ahead of the poll, the supporters of Kais Said rented a small apartment in a centenary building in downtown Tunis for their presidential campaign. The 61-year-old expert in constitutional law and university teacher is viewed by over 620,000 voters as the candidate of the students, the left behind, and the disillusioned youths. The leader of the first round of the early presidential election promised to respect the law and the will of the people.
We've succeeded thanks to the will of the people, the volunteers from youths, men, women, and even children. They contributed with small amounts, but with energy and dedication to writing a new chapter of Tunisian history. There is room for everybody in Tunisia.
Nabil Karouai could not comment or thank his 525,000 electors. The media tycoon is in jail on suspicion of money laundering and tax evasion. Karouai is the candidate of the poor and needy whom he visited hundreds of times with his medical and humanitarian caravans. The 56-year-old businessman created a strong bond of solidarity and support for his cause.
We were certain of the results of our candidate in the first round of the early presidential election. We visited all the towns and villages across Tunisia to represent Nabil's program. People have reacted positively and welcomed the project.
The election authority said that candidate Nabil Al-Karouai has the right to speak out and address his supporters, adding that ISI will renew its request to court to guarantee this right.
The election authority has full control of the election. According to the constitution, we must guarantee the candidate's right to a fair campaign, even if he's in jail. We renew our call to the judiciary to guarantee this right.
Foreign observers say the Independent High Authority for Elections, ISI, managed to secure the smooth conduct of the presidential polls despite a very short electoral campaign. Accordingly, elections were held in a calm atmosphere and in accordance with rules in force. The Ennahda party candidate for the presidential election and Parliament Speaker Abdel Fattah Mourou, who finished third in the election, and the country's Premier Youssef al-Shahid, who finished fifth, have accepted the results. They noted that politicians and parties should learn the lesson and decrypt the citizens' messages by voting for Kais Said and Nabil Al-Karouai. Adnan Chauchi, CGTN, Tunis.
And let's now go to Ramah Nyang for a look at the day's business news. Ramah.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. UN rules on the quality of fuel used in shipping will hit Nigeria due to its heavy reliance on generators for power. And the second All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition opens at the AU headquarters.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start with the business of energy. The price of diesel should significantly rise next year once United Nations rules on cleaning up international shipping, especially the fuel they use, take effect on the 1st of January. In countries like Nigeria, where most businesses depend on diesel-run generators, these costs are expected to be passed on to the consumer. CGTN's Alexandria Majala takes up the story.
Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, is plunged into darkness several times a day. Then its generators roar and the lights flood back on. The country is one of the world's largest economies, where businesses rely heavily on diesel-powered generators. More than 70% of its firms own or share the units. Government data shows generators provide at least 14 gigawatts of power annually, dwarfing the 4 gigawatts supplied on average by the country's electricity grid. Now diesel costs could spike globally, and many businesses are not prepared.
If the price of diesel goes up, it becomes more difficult for us to operate because consumers, considering the characteristic of the market in which we operate, are not ready to bear the price. And so it becomes more difficult, for us to think about expansion. First is survival, so we will survive the situation if the price of diesel goes up. This is a question I cannot really answer.
Diesel prices are expected to surge as the United Nations rules at cleaning up international shipping come into effect next year. Many ships are expected to burn distillates instead of dirtier fuel oil. While estimates vary widely, experts warn that prices could surge by nearly 20%.
The price increases may be sharper than most people expect, especially because diesel is not is deregulated in Nigeria already, so there's no subsidy on diesel. And as we've seen over time, the price of diesel has moved along with the international market. So if new rules cause the price to rise in the international market, we expect that will cascade into Nigeria as well.
Nigeria's population is growing at 2.6% each year, yet 40% of the population do not have power. West Africa's biggest economy has partnered with German engineering group Siemens to triple the country's reliable power supply to 11,000 megawatts by 2023. However, such plans have previously failed.
Many businesses may go under, businesses may struggle to survive, or in the best case scenario would at least downsize and shut down some production capacity. Because if you can't pay for the diesel for production, you can't pass the pricing for increased costs in diesel. The next logical thing to do is to shut down some of that production capacity and produce at the quantity that the demand can carry the price you are willing to sell at.
While many Nigerian households and small business generators are powered by price-capped gasoline, the big generators for larger farms, apartment complexes, and more substantial homes can only run on diesel. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Now, the second All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition event is taking place at the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia. China has sent a delegation to the four-day event and it's sharing its experience with managing food security at enormous scale. CGTN's Brian Toussaint reports.
Every 2 years, the AU Commission holds the All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition. The purpose of the meeting is to implement 2014's Malabo Declaration, which called for reduced postnatal food losses in Africa by 50% by the year 2025. This year's theme is Post-Harvest Loss Reduction and Agro-Processing, the drivers of agricultural transformation in Africa.
We Chinese always say people regard food as their prime want. China attaches great importance to food security and has many excellent success experiences. This time we are working with the African Union to understand the current situation, make our best, and work together to solve the problem of post-harvest loss.
The Chinese delegation shared their experiences in guaranteeing food security for their people. In the past 40 years, China has made great achievements in poverty reduction and social development and has successfully helped hundreds of millions of people out of hunger.
China is also participating very actively in this Congress. They are also bringing their technologies to share with us. They are also going to be participating in most of our panel discussions as well to share with us most of the new technologies that China has also put in place. So we are really looking forward to very strong engagement.
Experts say that Africa is the most food insecure continent on the planet, with about 25% of its people suffering from malnutrition. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, the total quantitative food loss has been estimated to be over 100 million metric tons per year. The lost grain alone could meet the annual food requirements of about 48 million people. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Now, Madagascar has launched the first edition of a tourism and transport forum called WAVE in a bid to boost its appeal as a choice destination for travel and investment. Though the country is one of the world's poorest nations, its economy has remained relatively upbeat. Growth was estimated at over 5%. The country's president, Andry Rajoelina, who assumed office in early 2019, says the country plans to host at least 500,000 foreign tourists in 5 years, in part by improving transport and infrastructure.
Madagascar needs to reclaim its place. I have always said Madagascar needs to be the wind of development in the Indian Ocean. And why not in Africa? Ladies and gentlemen, Madagascar needs to catch up from the developmental delay accumulated over the last decades. To do this, we have launched Vision Madagascar, which aims to develop the country with durable and inclusive growth.
Now, African print is becoming increasingly popular. South Africans are now starting to embrace African prints, and they're slowly diversifying away from essentially Western ideas of what fashion tends to be. This demand, in turn, has driven a young entrepreneur to produce Shweshwe-inspired swimwear. CGTN's Sumitra Naidu has that story.
Mapitso Tahisi was just 25 years old when she started her own active swimwear line.
For a while, I was out in the market looking for swimwear that had an African feel to it. And after I realized that there was nothing in the market, then I felt that I wanted to start something or explore within the South African prints or cultural prints what we could incorporate into a bikini or swimwear. And then that's how Shweshwe was born.
Signs of an entrepreneur. Tahisi spotted the gap in the market, but she had no knowledge of the fashion industry.
I just had an idea, and so that meant I wasn't able to understand, the how to do it. So I needed to outsource a lot of the services to make the products, and then it was also starter-up capital. So I just worked off my salary to actually fund the first few items of the business.
Judging from how rare and unique this material is in swimwear, success is inevitable.
The brand has evolved over time because at first I was just making swimwear for myself, and then there was more interest to make for either bigger sizes or even men as well. Empowering disadvantaged, marginalized people in society is something that I really want to build into my business. But also I'd love for 2020 to be the year where I break into the fashion scene, go showcase at SA Fashion Week or New York Fashion Week and London Fashion Week, just to get the business out there. So I really, really hope this summer will be a great break for us.
Tahisi keeps her overheads low. Her business is online, but she's hoping the Shweshwe will soon adorn the windows of big retailers. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of that hour. We'll be covering oil matters, but not the one you're thinking about. A dispute with the Ugandan government has basically stalled oil and gas projects in the country. What exactly went wrong, and how can one of Africa's frontier oil producers get back on track? We'll explore that at 1800 GMT. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Ramah, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. A life without keys. Techs in Sweden introduce microchips under the skin to replace keys and key cards.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market, it's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
wireless technology cards could soon be a thing of the past in Stockholm. The Swedish capital recently held a chipping party. People volunteered to have a near-field communication chip implanted in one of their hands. The microchips eliminate the need for car keys, credit cards and even train tickets. CGTN's Tulisha Balala has more.
This is the Gather Innovation Conference. Here, hundreds of Swedish nationals are going under the knife. The procedure uses a syringe-like device to implant a chip under the skin between the index finger and the thumb.
The chip implant as a key fob which sits under your skin, and what it does is you can use it to access your office or other public buildings like a swimming pool. You can also use it for accessing your gym or really any place where you would use a magnetic touch card.
This volunteer wants to replace his gym and railway cards and not have to worry about data security.
And when you exhale,
I've decided to implant one of these chips in my hand for exploring the actual opportunities it might bring. Since I learned recently that it's a passive chip, I'm not that worried about that. I should be more worried about the data that my smartphone is leaking on a daily basis. So since this is a passive chip, I'm not that worried about it.
Those who have undergone the procedure say it's relatively painless.
Well, honestly, I barely felt it. It felt like a mosquito, started doing something but never finished. So it wasn't as painful as one might think.
Near-field communication chip can be found in smartphones and smartwatches and are used to connect with other technology wirelessly. The implant chips will enable wearers to operate them as loyalty cards, gain access to buildings and to pay for public transport. Users can also connect them to their smartphones via an app.
You can also add data to your chip, put in case of emergency information. You can add your LinkedIn profile or your whatever website links you want to add on there. The most important and valuable dimension is when we'll be able to use implants for health logging purposes. Think of them as a Fitbit under your skin, where you can have a real-time input on all the different functions and data processes that is going on in your body. So that for me will be a breakthrough in terms of human health.
The trend of implanting chips has been growing. In 2017, a Wisconsin vending machine company offered its employees a chance to have a chip implanted in their hands, which could be used to buy snacks, log in computers, or to use the copy machine. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
A Nigerian girl is using the art of spoken word to preach peace and prosperity. She says she's on a mission to encourage her fellow citizens to join hands in building a better country, despite the numerous challenges facing Africa's most populous nation. CGTN's Philly has more on this story.
Nigeria, arise. Let's embrace peace. It will bring progress.
A plea for peace by 11-year-old spoken word artist Angelica Ituma. For 3 years now, she's used her talents to campaign in various gatherings like this one in Abuja. Angelica says she was inspired by reports of insurgency that's been going on in northeast Nigeria for nearly her entire life.
Every day I wake up and I see people on the news being killed, women and children being kidnapped, and I don't like it. So I want to use my spoken word to be able to reach out to Nigerians to embrace peace and progress. We will end the hatred.
The war against insurgency in Nigeria has claimed the lives of at least 20,000 people and displaced more than 2 million more. That's according to Human Rights Watch. And the government continues to wage war against the terrorist group Boko Haram to bring an end to the insurgency.
What about the labor of our founding fathers? The labor of our past heroes and heroines? Oh, they shall never be in vain.
Angelica believes her spoken word lines can cut through and affect many Nigerians who listen to her. She said she wants citizens to be inspired to work together and help their country make progress.
She's on a weekly program at this radio station where her voice echoes to a wider audience.
So arise, O compatriot. Let's serve our nation with love, strength, and faith. The Nigerian spirit is a winning spirit.
And she takes her crusade for peace and progress to more personal venues.
We are on the path of greatness. So stop seeking for the jobs, create the jobs. Stop seeking for the designers, create the designs. Yes, we can.
Those in the audience say her message is powerful.
A young graduate that I am, instead of waiting for jobs, I should be able to work on myself and create something to employ people.
What she's saying is amazing, and I pray that it will go around so that all Nigerians will hear this message of peace, absorb it, and put it into life so that at the end of the day, we will experience peace, harmony, unity in this nation.
Relentless and focused as Nigerians.
Angelica hopes her message will help bring about a Nigeria of her dream, one that will be pleasant for all. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Our technologies have improved.
Well, your sports news is coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Wales back row coach sent home from the Rugby World Cup over a breach of betting rules.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Africa's head coach Rassie Erasmus has claimed that referees often show bias towards the world top-ranked team. Speaking on Wednesday, just 2 days ahead of the Rugby World Cup, the 46-year-old says the lower-ranked teams could find it difficult going against the world #1 side, including when South Africa held that very spot. Erasmus shared his views ahead of his team's opening match at the World Cup against the defending champions New Zealand in Yokohama on Saturday.
Because New Zealand was so long #1 in the world, I think there was a time when they had so much respect from every level, even from referees, and I think it was a well-known fact that when it was really tough times and teams were under the pump, some of the 50-50 decisions just went their way because they deserved that being #1 so long. It happened to many other teams that was #1 for long stages. It happened to the Springboks when we were #1 in 2009. It happened to various teams who were #1 for long stages. And I think the point being made is I think at this stage it's tough to say. Now Ireland is #1, then Wales, then England, then South Africa is #4. And I just think that preconceived idea that, listen here, this team can't beat this team, I think that's gone. I think this is the World Cup where any team can beat any team.
Wales back row coach Rob Howley has been sent home from the Japan 2019 World Cup 48 hours before the start of the tournament. This is for an alleged breach of world rugby laws covering betting and anti-corruption. The 48-year-old's departure is a huge blow just 6 days before Wales' opening game in Japan against Pool D opponents Georgia. Wales have sent for Stephen Jones to fill the gap left by Howley's sudden departure, and Jones is expected to arrive imminently at the squad's Kia Yusu base. The investigation into Howley will be led by the Welsh Rugby Union, and an independent judicial panel is likely to be involved.
You know, we got a shock the other day, like I said, and you know, it took us a bit of time for it to sink in, and you have to deal with adversity at times. You know, we lose key players, and how you respond and react to that, and this has happened. And I must say that the players in the last 24 hours have really stepped up, and they've been incredibly responsible and resilient, and sometimes that brings teams closer together. And but our whole, you know, we've got to draw a line in the sand under this and really focus on preparing the team for the next 5 days.
In the meantime, Australia were the latest team to receive their official welcome ahead of the Rugby World Cup. The Wallabies were given a traditional welcome in Sapporo in Japan ahead of their tournament opener against Fiji on Saturday. The team arrived from Odawara, where they have been training for the past 10 days. A welcoming party of children wearing gold T-shirts, as well as a drum performance, marked the official reception from locals and officials. The Wallabies finished second at the last Rugby World Cup in England, and their head coach, Michael Shaker, said the side is in Japan to go one better.
The word expectation, I don't expect anything. We are hungry to play our best rugby. We want to do two things. Obviously, we spoke before, to do our best to win the tournament. And we also want to show the young people in Australia who are watching that how beautiful rugby game can be, and to play rugby in the future for the young people back home as well. It's a big event, so the better we play, the 2 goals can be achieved.
I'm really excited to be here, and we're 3 nights away from our first game, the 2019 Rugby World Cup. It's been a great build-up, and like I said before, these are unique years and such special tournaments, mate, and I'm really grateful and honoured to be a part of a 4th. So I can't wait to get stuck in and get going.
In other news, Africa powerhouse Ethiopia is aiming for overwhelming success at the Doha 2019 IAAF World Championships in athletics. The head coach, Hussein Shibo, is confident they are ready to face the world in their quest to be the best from the continent. CGTN's Girum Chala visited the team in their camp and filed this report.
It's been close to 2 months since these members of the Ethiopian national athletics team camped in a hotel in the outskirts of Addis Ababa, and they've been training twice daily in preparation for the Doha 2019 World Athletics Championship. Hussein Shibo, the well-experienced head coach of the team, says they are ready.
Our preparation is just enough for this important tournament. We have a short time. We are ready both physically and mentally. God willing, we will return with one of the best results in our athletics history.
In Doha, Ethiopia will be represented by 42 track and field athletes, and already commentators are favoring Ethiopia for 5 and 10,000 meters of victory. The team hopes for a better performance too.
All of us are heading to Doha to win. That is exactly what our intention is. We have worked hard to achieve that plan. We have to perform with extra caution. I'm sure we will return with good results.
We always prepare before heading to tournaments. The same is happening now as well. We expect good results, which would justify our hard work.
The first batch of the Ethiopian athletics team heads to Doha end of next week. Apart from their dominance in 5 and 10,000 meters, Ethiopia is also expected to get gold in a different distance, following the victory of Getinet Wale on the Diamond League on the 3,000 meters steeplechase title, making him a front-runner for the gold medal in an event that Kenyans have dominated and owned for the years. Grumjala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
On to European football, where Juventus has inspected Atletico's Wanda Metropolitano Stadium ahead of their Group D match. Juventus will go into the match having last won the Champions League in the 19